Today, we will be taking a deep dive into Rutherford B. Hayes and his opinions of different social matters of the Gilded Age. Rutherford B. Hayes fits into the industry, labor, and immigration sub-era. Due to the rise of manufacturing in the late 1800s, farmers found themselves overshadowed by high tariffs, large corporations buying plots of land, and high transportation costs. Rutherford B. Hayes, during his presidency, vetoed the Bland-Allison Act, which was eventually overturned by Congress. This act, which required the Treasury to put a certain amount of silver into circulation, was supported by farmers of the era due to the probability of an increase in crop prices. Based on Hayes's decision to veto the bill, it can be concluded that Hayes was not too sensitive to the issues farmers faced during the Gilded Age. Hayes's presidency has been highlighted by economic prosperity. A large part of this prosperity of the northern industries is attributed to the high tariff rates of the late 1800s. The Morrill Tariff of the 1860s remained throughout the 1870s, gathering the support of industry, especially in the Northeast, while drawing opposition from the South and West due to the increased prices that resulted from the tariff rates. The continuity of the effects of the Morrill Tariff Act during the Gilded Age suggests that Rutherford B. Hayes held a favorable opinion of the growing industry of the time period. Rutherford B. Hayes held firm on the role and resulting events of labor unions. During the Great Railroad Strike of 1877, Hayes was quick to send federal troops into the situation when violent mobs erupted. Hayes sought to protect the mail at the various locations where rioting took place and put a definite end to the strikes. This action angered many workers throughout the country. The result of the strikes put labor unions against Hayes, as it was believed that Hayes was not as sympathetic to the cause of organized unions. It is clear that Hayes did not have an unfavorable view of the captains of industry, as he continued the laissez-faire policies of the time period. As mentioned earlier, Hayes vetoed the Bland-Allison Act as he believed the ensuing inflation would ruin big business. He even stated that, quote, expediency and justice both demand an honest currency, unquote. This reasoning is what can lead others to believe that Hayes largely favored business, and therefore would be indifferent to the captains of industry that presented themselves in the late 19th century. The 1868 Burlingame Treaty permitted unrestricted immigration from China to the United States. This increased tension between white and Chinese laborers due to the competition of employment eventually resulted in anti-Chinese riots throughout the West Coast. Hayes thought it would be best to discourage, but not prohibit, the high rate of Chinese immigration into the states. He also sought to negotiate with China in an effort to revise the Burlingame Treaty. After negotiations by his appointed committee in 1880, an immigration treaty was reached. The terms of the treaty allowed the United States to regulate, limit, and suspend the influx of Chinese laborers, but not prohibit them. Hayes understood the importance of immigration to the rapid advancement of the nation, but also was considerate to the worries and frustrations shared by white laborers. As a result of the lack of regulation on big corporations and the laissez-faire economic policies of the time period, there was an ever-widening gap between the rich and the poor classes in the United States. Rutherford B. Hayes was a strong supporter of meritocracy himself. Meritocracy describes the political system in which power is vested in the talent and effort of the individual rather than awarded on the basis of social class. Such a policy would describe the visions of the captains of industry, such as Andrew Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, and John D. Rockefeller, who was actually Hayes' 17th cousin. In conclusion, Hayes put a larger emphasis on a prospering economy, that is, the rise in average income and standard of living, rather than directly addressing the increasing gap between the rich and poor. Coming into the presidency, Rutherford B. Hayes stressed the importance of healing the nation's wounds following the Civil War. Hayes emphasized that the schoolhouse, not the railroad station, was the key to political stability and to economic prosperity in the South. However, he did not make substantial contributions toward the efforts of regulating the robber barons of the time. Although Hayes demonstrated promising aspirations for improving public policy and the common good, his one-term presidency did not provide sufficient time to enact many significant reforms in the post-Reconstruction era. One change that did take place as a result of Hayes' term, though, was the return to the gold standard of currency, which gained support in industrial areas of the North. The laissez-faire policies of government defined the Gilded Age and allowed the titans of industry to rise above the rest. Rutherford B. Hayes supported the possibility of a citizen being able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and rise in social class. Hayes did not believe that government should interfere with one's personal desires to make it big in industry, and as a result did not enact regulatory measures to crack down and limit large monopolies during his presidency. Both during and after his presidency, Rutherford B. Hayes acted upon his passion of beginning civil rights reform. He stressed the importance of the protection of voting rights for Black Americans as well as education for the less fortunate. During his presidency, he became a trustee of the Peabody Fund, the goal of which was to better the educational opportunities for blacks and whites in the South. Hayes also became the first president of the board of the John F. Slater Education Fund for Freedmen in 1882, which gave $1 million to provide Christian education for Southern blacks. One of the recipients of the fund was none other than civil rights activist W.E.B. Du Bois, who is pictured to the left. Following his presidential term, Hayes traveled the country speaking on the topics relating to policy reform. Lastly, displayed here is a real letter composed by Rutherford B. Hayes. The letter was addressed to Benjamin Harrison in 1889 after the results of the 1888 election. Most notably in this letter is the praise Hayes gives to Harrison regarding Harrison's inaugural address. Hayes compared his speech to that of the greatest figures in American history, stating, quote, "Jefferson and Lincoln, by a long distance, excel all others in their inaugural addresses. Yours will take rank with theirs. It is all golden," unquote. Thank you for listening to our findings of Rutherford B. Hayes in the post-Reconstruction era. We hope you found it worthwhile to listen. Thank you for your time.